time with family, staying active, doing what you love. We understand how important it is to live your best life, even as times are changing. At Holzer, we strive to help every patient achieve their best health during every stage of life. With more options for care through in-person and virtual visits, we are dedicated to providing you with excellent care every time. Live your best life with Holzer.
Welcome to the newest episode of Talk of the Town, the podcast. I'm Josh Wellington, the Executive Director of the Gallia County Chamber of Commerce. Joining me today from the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council, Matthew Roberts. Matthew, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
So, I guess to get started, let our listeners know exactly what the Sustainable Ohio Public Energy Council is and what you do as an organization a little bit, and then we'll get into kind of the technicalities of it all.
Yeah, so it's a bit complicated. We're set up as a council of governments, so a collection of local governments working as one body called SOPEC.
Okay.
And we are now 21 member communities. Most of our communities are in Southeast Ohio, and our main role is to be a public electricity aggregator. So in Ohio, a few other states in the country, you as a resident, you as a small business, have energy choice. You can choose your supplier for electricity or natural gas. You can do that individually. I'm sure people are familiar with people trying to get them to sign up for a supply contract at a store, or actually come right to your house and kind of pressure you to sign onto something. But what we do is we aggregate an entire community, or in this case multiple communities, and represent them and have suppliers compete for the business of every eligible customer in that community or multiple communities. So we serve as like a broker role, but the real juice is the cohesion amongst all the communities. We get to come together as a board, as a general assembly. Its elected officials are ultimately, my boss and every staff member of SOPEC's boss, and we're creating the best electric aggregation program that we can. And that's the bread and butter. And then on top of that, we do a number of different services, programs, and projects to really show the value of having your community be part of SOPEC.
So what communities, first of all, in Gallia County and the surrounding areas do you serve? 2
right now.
Okay.
City of Gallipolis and Village of Rio Grande.
Okay, so if you're it's in it's right inside the city limits, correct? Or is it anybody with, say, a Gallipolis mailing address?
Yeah, that's really important. It's only folks inside the city limits.
Okay.
And electric aggregation is funny. You have to do a number of steps to get a program started. The community has to pass on their local ballot that they're okay with having an electric aggregation program start up. And then if it passes on the ballot, then it's up to the city council and the administration of that municipality to decide, are we going to do this alone? Are we going to do this in conjunction with a council of governments like SOPEC? And both communities, Rio and Gallipolis, decided to join SOPEC and buy electricity with everyone else that's in SOPEC.
So if you're a resident of, say, Gallipolis City, and you're inside the city limits, and you currently get your power through AEP. When you get your bill, it's American Electric Power. It's been that way for however many years. Is it each individual resident has that choice, or is it if the city says, yes, we're going with this, then it's everybody in the city's under that rate?
Yeah, so the ballot measure that passes often is an opt-out electric aggregation or natural gas aggregation program. So that means that everyone that's eligible gets automatically enrolled into the program when it starts, unless they elect to opt out.
Okay.
So, and folks can opt in and out whenever they want, at least through our program, without any charge. So they can kind of play the market and jump into the program when it's good, jump out of the program when, it's maybe a little bit more expensive than what AEP Ohio will give you as their standard service offer. But Gallipolis had done this a few years ago alone. and then they had an electric aggregation program and were doing it alone, but they had very recently decided to join SOPEC.
Okay.
With Rio, we kind of came in there and let them know that this is something that exists. Worked with the mayor, the council. We invested in a campaign to get people to understand what electric aggregation is, and it passed, and then they decided to join SOPEC, so we were able to create a program for them as well and roll them into the large bundle that is serving all the communities now.
So because you have so many communities, does that allow you to give a cheaper rate than, say, an aggregator that just serves that village alone?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
The idea is you get a little bit of bulk purchasing power. And yeah, I mean, the thing that's confusing, and it's hard to even describe when you're in the know, is, there's the suppliers, and then there's the electric distribution utilities, is what they're technically called.
Okay.
So everyone knows AEP, but that's a little bit too vague to just say AEP. So AEP Ohio is the company that owns the poles, the wires, all of that. They bill you, they handle power outages, they do customer support. All of that is AEP Ohio, the utility, the electric distribution utility. Then there's a slew of suppliers out there that could serve anyone on the AEP Ohio lines as a competitive supplier. And so our program is supplied by AEP Energy. Still part of the large multi-state huge AEP corporation, but they're separate businesses. AEP Energy competes and is a supplier with other suppliers to get business for folks that are wanting to choose their energy supplier. So AEP Energy, if you're in the aggregation program with us and you look at your AEP Ohio bill, you'll see the generation charge or the supply charges for AEP Energy, and that's just the supply portion. All the other charges are AEP Ohio, and that's the distribution, the transmission, all that customer support that kind of happens to deliver the electricity in the first place. So hopefully that kind of clears it up a little bit.
So what do you see as, for a customer who has signed up with SOPEC to be their energy provider, their aggregator, they're who they have chosen to go with, do you always see a savings? You said people can opt out when it gets maybe a little more expensive or the numbers get closer. On average, I guess, what is the overall benefit of going, I guess, non-traditionally and doing this opt-in program?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how the aggregation program is set up. The first goal that we have is to save folks money on the long term. The AEP Ohio price that folks would get if they didn't shop for their own supplier or didn't get a supply from an aggregation program, that changes quarterly, sometimes monthly, and it's just based on wholesale electricity market conditions. What we try to do is to anticipate what the market's going to do over a period of time, let's say a year or 2 years, and lock in a rate and fix it from that point, a year or a full 2 years. And so our goal is to try to find the sweet spot and lock in at the right time so that it's going to be better overall over, in this case right now, we're in a 2-year supply contract for all of our communities. And that started June 2021. So we're just a few months into it right now.
Okay.
A little bit higher than the AEP Ohio price to compare, and I could go forever about why that's the case and what's going on in the wholesale electricity market. But we're still pretty confident that that's going to be, our rate's going to be better over that 2-year period.
So more the long play
It's a long play, kind of locking into supply contracts to mitigate any variability or kind of volatility in the electricity market that we're expecting is going to happen over the next year and a half at this point. On top of that, then you can kind of get fancy with program design. So one of the cool things, and this is where sustainable comes in, is all of our customers have a 100% renewable energy supply. So all of our customers in the program, we purchased renewable energy credits, so renewable energy that was developed somewhere in the country. There's a credit that gets, or a certificate that gets created for every 1 megawatt hour of renewable energy generated. And then we buy that and slap it on to the supply contract that we get all of our customers. So that attribute of the green power gets put onto the supply that we get everyone. So that's cool. There's a lot of folks that find that pretty awesome. You know, a lot of our customers are sustainability focused, and we want to try to meet that need for them. On top of that, part of our rate structure includes a community grant program, so we give money right back to the local governments to invest in certain assets that are going to save taxpayers long term. So improvements for water infrastructure, improvements for city or village-owned buildings that are typically energy improvement projects that are going to save the city or the village money over time because they're not going to be spending so much on electricity or natural gas in the first place.
So high efficiency lighting.
Yeah, things like that. Okay. Yeah, which, as I said, we'll save taxpayer money. If that money's not going to paying for the electric bills, that could be invested elsewhere.
Right.
So it's a long-term play for that as well, to see the gains. But if everyone's in this together for a long time, they'll really realize it pretty quickly when they're paying less on their electric bill, less on their gas bill.
Green energy is definitely something that's a hot topic when it comes to powering your home or business, and solar is making a giant push throughout the country. Mm-hmm. What is SOPEC's involvement, if any, in the solar end of energy?
Yeah, it's a multifaceted approach with our involvement in solar. We don't discriminate what type of solar. There's small scale solar for the home or for a small business, and there's large utility scale solar. Both are kind of needed if we're going to address climate change and reduce our emissions and kind of fix that issue. But one of the things that we've been doing for a long time is we've had a long-standing relationship with the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture. They have a program that they've had for a few decades now, I believe. It's the Rural Energy for America program. And so they have this grant that small businesses and agricultural producers can tap into, and the USDA will give them 25% back off the cost of their energy efficiency improvement or renewable energy investment. And in that program, we really focus on solar because we feel that's the best type of investment you can make in this region. I think energy efficiency is always going to be a better move, but right. There's a lot of benefits right now. The USDA REAP grant is competitive, so businesses are competing for a pot of money to get that 25% for their investment. There's the 26% federal tax credit, and I don't think that's going to go away anytime soon. And it might even get bumped back up to 30%. Who knows? It's all kind of in the politics right now. And then when you invest in solar, you can do an accelerated bonus depreciation. So as a business, you can kind of write off, so to say, the investment of the solar system as an improvement, a capital improvement on your business. That could be up to another 25% off. Okay. So if you do the math and you have the right tax liability and you want to reduce your business's income and you want to get that grant, best case scenario, you could get 75% off or so. And so it's a really good play. It's a really good long-term investment for a business if they're willing to kind of go through the steps and really learn what they need to do. And that's where we come in. Okay. We're a neutral party. We're not a solar installation company.
Right.
We just kind of educate. We'll go out to the business site and we'll spend 30 minutes to an hour kind of looking at the property. Is it best on the roof? Is it best kind of as a ground mount system if you have some land? What's your tax appetite? How can we get the best kind of situation for you? And, we'll visit a couple dozen every year or so, and 2, 3, 4 of those will actually make an investment. And we're confident the other ones will eventually make the move. COVID really threw a wrench in just about everything.
Right.
But yeah, we're really trying to drive people to see the value in just investing in solar as a small business.
What about residential and solar investment for, say, just single-family homes, things of that nature? Is that something that SOPEC is also involved in helping members of communities to advance that in the region?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely promote it where we can, have conversations with people that call us or email us, and we'll go through that process with them to get them thinking about it. We'll refer them to installers that are nearby if they want to have a real conversation and get close to making an investment. But for homes or businesses that have a really high electricity bill, it's a good investment decision today to go ahead and do that, because often the cost to pay back monthly the loan that you get for a solar system is going to be less than what you're saving. So you with the solar system, you're saving a good month on your electricity bill. That is a bigger chunk than what you're paying back to pay off the loan for the solar system, if you're using enough.
Right.
And so often the payback on a solar system these days is about 7 to 10 years, and then after you make that full payback, all the electricity that's generated is kind of like free. It's already been paid for. And these systems are often warranted for like 25 years. I've seen systems that work 30, 40 years still pretty well.
Okay.
When people, like early folks, got into this back in the 80s or even 70s when it was just getting going. But now the cost has come down so much that it really makes sense to look at it for just about everyone.
I think there's sometimes a misconception with solar, especially residential, about when you're generating this energy, like that there's a virtual type of tank that this power goes into. So you absorb all this energy through the panels, and then when it's dark, that's still there. It's in this, it's kind of held. But that is, can you explain kind of how the solar works with a system set up and kind of how people use the energy and things like that?
Yeah, it's good to go into this a little bit. So 99% of solar systems are grid tied, which means that it's going to pull your solar first if it's available, and then it will pull from the grid. So a lot of people think that if I go solar, then I won't be able to have grid power anymore.
Right.
That's not the case at all. If you want to try to take advantage of having some backup power, when, say, like the grid goes down for a day or a week, who knows, you can install a battery backup system tied with your solar system and, feed like 20% of your solar to the battery bank and then use the rest when it's available.
Right.
Plenty of people do that. It's a little bit costly right now, but the battery world is also on the same trajectory. It's going to come down to the point where it won't even make sense to not do solar and storage together. So that's happening very quickly. But then the other thing that makes this really nice is most utilities, definitely the investor-owned, like AEP, Dayton Power and Light, the First Energy up in the Cleveland area, they have net metering arrangements where basically they just take the net amount of what you've produced versus what you've used and bill you accordingly. So if you use a lot if your solar system is producing a lot in the day, more than you're even needing or using, then the meter will spin backwards and calculate that. And it will do that for the entire billing month. And then, sometimes people have a bill where it says negative 100 something kilowatt hours. So their system produced 100 more kilowatt hours than they used, and they'll get a credit on their bill for that. So that kind of helps the numbers play out a little bit. And what SOPEC's done in the solar space for residential and small commercial customers that we serve is our compensation structure. So if you are someone that produces more than you use in a month, the compensation structure is at the retail rate instead of the wholesale rate that the utilities will often provide. They don't want to give you the retail rate. They want to just cut their losses at the wholesale level. But we've negotiated with our supplier, AP Energy, to just give them the retail rate if they go over. So I think that's a first. I don't know of any other aggregation program that's pushed that.
Okay.
The state recently allowed that to happen, where suppliers could get into the net metering space and offer that as well as the utilities do. They weren't obligated to do it, but we have a lot of buying power and a lot of sway, so we're like, well, we want to keep growing, we want to keep bringing in more communities, give you business AEP Energy as our supplier. Can you meet us here and for folks that invest in solar, give them the retail rate compensation when they produce extra?
What would you, if you could put an average cost on putting in a solar system on an average size, 1,700 square foot ranch style home, the traditional single family dwelling in an area like this, if someone was looking at the cost of solar without grant opportunities and things like that, can you give a ballpark as to kind of what a customer is looking at if they decide to make that jump?
It's tough to say that. I can do some. I have a little pen and paper here, so I can maybe do some math. But it's tough to say. That's kind of like, how much is a house?
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of different house types out there.
Exactly.
But you have to look at how much electricity you're using. The more electricity you're using, the better the solar numbers are going to look. But right now the going rate is about $2.50 per watt. You can just say 2,500 per kilowatt. Most homes would need, I would say, like 4 to 5 kilowatt system.
Okay.
So, times 4 or 5, that's 10,000. I would say $10,000 to $15,000 for an investment, just base level. It might need to be a little bit bigger than that if you want to try to cover 100% of your usage.
Right.
Might even be less. But I mean, it sounds a lot at first. You're like, oh, sticker shock a little bit.
Right.
But I would encourage people to look at their electricity bill and see how much they're paying for electricity over a year, and then look at how much they're paying for electricity over a 10-year period.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll probably see, like, okay, well, if I get a solar system and pay that, I get a 10-year loan for that, and I see the reduction on my electricity bill, it actually is pretty much in parity. I could make this investment now, and I get the federal tax credit,
Right.
the 26% federal tax credit. I can, keep on using that until it runs out.
So explain that tax credit a little bit. You say 26%. 26%
Of the cost of the system.
Okay.
So the bigger the investment, the bigger that percentage tax credit is for you.
So,
which is why it looks really good for a small business, because they have a bigger tax liability than a residential. They're operating on more income than a residential. So that's why we focus more on small businesses and assistance than residential. But it's just whatever the cost is of the system, and I think the maximum amount is $7,500, and so then you can use that tax credit until you've wiped your credit clean, basically.
a lot of families in this area, maybe they heat with a natural gas as opposed to electric. Is there still a strong solar benefit for those kind of people who are using gas a lot more maybe than heating with electric?
I would say so. There's definitely going to be some folks where it's just not going to make sense. The only thing that they're using electricity for is lighting. And in that case, I would say maybe you should just switch all of your lights to LEDs. That's going to save you a lot real quick.
Right.
And then, it would be a lot better if we had more options in Ohio than what we have. There's states that, you can kind of buy from a shared solar system and do like virtual net metering. We don't really have that set up. Some of the rural electric cooperatives do, and they're trying to do that a little bit. So you could like subscribe at the level that is kind of in line with how much you're paying for electricity. But we're just not there yet in Ohio.
Okay. So if a person, back to the kind of the aggregator side of SOPEC, if a person's hearing this and they live in, say, Cheshire or Benton or Bidwell, so they're not in a community right now that is reaping the benefits of what you have to offer, what are the steps for them to get you guys in there to where they can get some of these savings on their electricity?
Well, we'd have to work with the local elected officials, kind of make that introduction happen, tell our story. If they are on board with what we're doing, then we'll work with them to get a ballot initiative created and get it with the Board of Elections, get it approved and up for the next vote. We do invest money in educating people about what's coming. We're not, as a public agency, we can't invest in a campaign that's like vote yes for electric aggregation. We can't do that. We'll get in a lot of trouble. We're a state organization.
Right.
So we can invest in please vote, or please look at this information and know what you're going to vote on, so that you're an informed voter, and then hopefully it works out. If it passes, then we go back to the local elected officials and say, congratulations, your community passed opt-out electric aggregation, and this is the program that we could set up for you. Here's the features that you can pick and choose from, kind of like a la carte. If your community doesn't want 100% renewable energy as part of its program, we can wipe that off. But all of our communities have chosen to do so.
Okay.
Then a program probably takes about 6 months to get off the ground once that decision to join SOPEC has been made. There's a lot of steps. Council has to approve joining SOPEC. Our board has to approve that community coming in. That takes some time. And then the program starts. Everyone that's a customer or an eligible customer will get automatically rolled in. They get a letter in the mail describing the program. They can fill out a form, opt out. They can call the number, opt out before it even begins. Okay. And then they know when the program's going to begin. Then it starts, it's going, and then we post the rate on our website. And if you go to our website, you can find the Find My Community tab to see if your community is part of SOPEC, and you can click your community and see what the rate is, how long it's fixed for, all the different program features. You can sign up for budget billing still. You can opt out, opt back in whenever you want. It's all about still making sure people have the choice. Right. But the only way to get the supplier on board with giving us a good deal is to get everyone officially in, eligible to join. If we had to go door by door and opt in people one by one, we would never get a program started. Right. And that's why most, if not all, aggregation programs in the state are opt-out structure.
In closing, we've got just a couple minutes left. Is this something that you see, and maybe it's already there in some other areas, where we have a lot of small communities that aren't necessarily, they don't have a mayor, they don't have a village council. Mm-hmm. Is this something that you see in the future where, let's say, a county commission can say, okay, we're going to do this for Gallia County, or we're going to do this for Meigs County, and now everyone is eligible? Mm-hmm. We've made it a county-wide ballot initiative as opposed to a village initiative.
Yeah, you can absolutely do that. You can aggregate by township, village, city, or county. Okay. What makes it difficult to do an entire county is how the electric utilities are set up in the state. With Gallia County, you have AEP Ohio, and then I think you also have Buckeye Rural. If you're a Buckeye Rural customer, you can't be in an aggregation program because everyone that's in Buckeye Rural is already an aggregated entity. That's their own utility. There's no competitive supply. That electric cooperative is buying power for their customers, just like we're buying power for our customers. Right. So doing it countywide, you'd run into a situation where you might have people voting no for it when it doesn't even affect them at all. So it'd be very difficult to target kind of informational stuff towards only the AEP Ohio customers. Right. That's where it gets really difficult. It's really easy to do in Athens County, Scioto County, where like all of the county is an investor in utility AEP Ohio. Okay. So that's why we kind of focus on, well, this village is all AEP Ohio, this township is, or this city is. That's kind of the situation. Okay. You have to deal with.
If a person out there listening is a leader in the community or their municipality and they want to learn more, in closing, kind of how can they get a hold of you to get more information?
I would say just search SOPEC, SOPEC on your web search, Google, whatever. But our URL is sopec-oh.gov. Okay. So we're a government entity, and there's a ton of information on our website. That you can see all of our communities, you can see all the programs that we've done, you can look at our history, all of our documents for how we govern ourselves and go about board meetings, and if you want to know every little thing we've done, you could do like a public records request and see it all pretty much. So we're really set up to be open and transparent and focused on the future. We know sustainable energy is coming. It's best to get ahead of it and try to be at the forefront of that, because if not, then it's going to be kind of what we see today, where these huge entities, these large corporations own the lion's share of the value. And if we can get ahead of that and bring some of that back into the local community, then that's great. That's our goal.
Well, Matthew, I appreciate you stopping in. Our time is up already. If you have, like you said, if you have questions, head to their website. If you have trouble, locating that or whatever, give us a call at the chamber. We can get you in touch with them very easily. So we appreciate you guys being part of the Chamber of Commerce, and we look forward to exciting things in the communities that you serve coming up. Don't forget, join us next week as Kelly O'Brien from the Women's Business Center of Central Appalachia stops by to talk grants, startups, and all things economic development. That'll be next week on the Talk of the Town. Until then, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.